This is Cents Per Mile, featuring Charles Gracie, Paul Gibson, and Josh Haynes. Everyone knows the trucking industry has issues, but most people are afraid to talk about it.
Someone's got to do it.
With loads of recruiting and marketing experience and backed by the largest driver audience in the world, we deliver carriers the driver perspective, find solutions, and help make sense make sense.
Thank you for tuning in to Cents Per Mile. I'm Charles Gracie.
Hi, and I'm your co-host, Paul Gibson.
What's up? I'm Josh Haynes. Charles, what are we talking about today?
We're talking about making trucking great again. We're talking about stats. We're talking about tech trends. We're talking about trucking. Paul's over there pouting.
I'm not pouting. You know, I did my civic duty. I made a choice. We all did. Well, at least 40% of us did. But anyway, either way, regardless of how you voted, elections do have consequences. Some of them are good and some of them are bad. And we have some people that are smarter than us to come on and talk about it. But before we get to that, you can find our podcast on Spotify, iHeartRadio, Apple, like YouTube, anywhere that you consume media, essentially. So if you could, and you're wherever you're listening to or watching us, like, subscribe, rate, which gets us more momentum out there in the space and more people find the podcast so we can do some cooler stuff.
You can also go to centspermilepodcast.com where you should suggest a topic to be a guest or even to be one of our sponsors.
Sponsors? Who's our sponsor today, Charles?
We have TAFS. Put your business in the hammer lane. Go to TAFS.com.
Yep. And so if you've been watching the past few weeks, we've been talking about F3 and how you could buy tickets. But you snoozed way too late. But Freightwaves is great. F3 is awesome. This is pre-recorded, but if you're watching this, we are there right now having a way better time than you are. So with that, the next 2 weeks, we will be helping you out by giving you some coverage from that event. But right now it's time to go behind the wheel. All right, so it's time to go behind the wheel. Working with CDLLife, we have access to the world's largest driver audience, and we can ask their opinions and get real thoughts on real issues from real drivers. With that, as far as the election goes, we have some pretty interesting data. As far as the impact of the election on trucking, 43% of drivers are unsure how the trucking industry will be impacted. 32 have a positive outlook, 15% have a negative outlook, and 12% say no impact. As far as the economy goes, over 70% of drivers view the state of the economy in some sort of negative way, whether it's some sort of negative or like just bad.
Which that checks out based on the election results and, completely flipping everything upside down after this election. I feel like people wanted a change.
Well, and the interesting thing, though, too, is this data came before that. I would be interested to see how it felt or how they feel afterwards, especially because you see so many companies just kind of opening up their wallets now, which we'll get into in a bit because I think I have a take on that. Anyway, so the next one is, do politicians understand driver needs?
Trucking doesn't even understand driver needs. This is going to be spicy.
That's why we have a podcast. So 46% said not at all. Surprise. 32 said to a limited extent, which I think that's a nice way to say, yeah, they know what's up, but they really don't care. 12% said unsure, which seems absurd to me. And even more absurd, 10%, yes, they have a strong understanding. Okay.
I want to know where that 10% works.
Right. Well, it's nice to know that the numbers on the next one do kind of adjust it all out. So the next question was, will legislation get passed to help drivers? 66% said no. 20% said possible but doubtful. 9% said unsure, and 5% said yes. I mean, we've covered that on the show. It takes what, I can't remember. I saw some stat the other day of how many like actual sessions of Congress it typically takes a bill to go through. That's not something that makes for good ratings.
You mean like bathroom access?
Yeah, exactly.
The fact that we need a bill for that.
We're through 2 sessions and it hasn't even made it to the floor.
But if Craig Fuller gets DOT secretary, I bet you that's first on the list. Just saying.
I would you can't vote for secretaries, but I would vote for Craig. But yeah, that's the interesting thing too. Like, so the bathroom bill, for example, it's one of those things where it's like it's such a common sense thing, but it doesn't happen, and that is something that both the ATA and OIDA are both pushing for. So you have the two major lobby groups that represent, companies and drivers accordingly, and they can't even get that on the floor, let alone the bills that they disagree on.
It'll get thrown in with like the border wall and everything else. It'll be like a let's make a deal package that has everything but that in there by itself. And then we're going to phone a friend and then watch it. And then it's going to maybe hit the floor. Doubtful, but maybe.
Or maybe somebody's buddy with one of those truck stops that Truck Parking Club got approached by, and they're not going to put that in there because they don't want to help drivers. I don't know. We'll see. But yeah, I think at that point, it is time, because we've dove into it a little bit, it's time to go behind the desk with Tenstreet.
The road to success in the trucking industry is fraught with challenges, especially for safety managers. There are ever-changing compliance rules, accidents, liability issues, skyrocketing insurance rates. The list goes on and on. With nuclear verdicts on the rise, companies have to worry about lawyers going after them for big payouts after an accident. One mistake could cost you everything. If your team is still using traditional paperwork filing, manual processes, and multiple systems to manage safety, you're wasting valuable time, increasing costs, and exposing your company to legal risks. Tenstreet has a better way. Our safety management platform makes safety simple and streamlined, using the power of technology to protect you from liability, reduce costs, and stay compliant. Our dashboard lets you manage all post-hire activities from one place. Safety data, equipment tracking, claims and event management, and more. Tenstreet gives you access to each of your drivers' full history. Our telematics integrations let you monitor their performance and assign automated training to improve driver safety. This, combined with customized coaching programs, helps you reduce incidents per mile and lower insurance premiums. And in the case of an accident, Tenstreet's platform makes documentation easy for the driver. They can upload videos, pictures, and police reports using our Driver Pulse app, which flows directly into your dashboard. This driver data, combined with telematics and detailed training records, provides a strong defense against costly lawsuits. With Tenstreet, you can automate and streamline your systems and build your business with confidence, knowing the safety and reputation of your team is protected. Join the thousands of carriers using Tenstreet. Sign up for a personalized demo to see how we can give you peace of mind and help your business thrive.
At TAFS, we offer unparalleled trucking excellence and service. Enjoy exclusive benefits like fantastic tire discounts and 1-hour advances for quick cash. Recognized as the top factoring company in 2023, we're your partner for success. Access business loans, manage finances with ease through our client portal, F2 fuel card, and mobile app. Contact us now to see how we can help your trucking business thrive.
All right, so it's time to make sense, and talk about our main topic. Elections have consequences, and kind of talking about what that is all about. So,
Paul, I'm going to stop you. Elections don't always have to have consequences. Certainly that's a portion of it, but there's also perks. There's change. There's reason to be optimistic, Paul. We're going to make trucking great again, Paul.
I really wish you would stop saying that.
Look, Paul, after the election, I even got a new haircut.
You didn't get a haircut. You just cut off all of your hair.
It's a new year, new me, new trucking. Be optimistic, positive, Paul.
Hey, you know what? One, I totally support you embracing the sad thing that's happening to your hairline. Two, I consequences can be a good thing. They absolutely can. Like, I don't know, I can't think of a good analogy off the top of my head, except for maybe like there's that shell chocolate stuff that you put on top of ice cream. You put it on top of the ice cream, it gets hard, and now you have like a hard chocolate shell on your ice cream. That's a consequence, and it's good. Reactions. But with that being said, some things aren't consequences, because like there are a lot of companies across the board, across all industries, who are kind of opening up their wallets right now.
Optimism.
Right, optimism. But that's the thing, is the part that worries me is there's objectively what's going to happen, and then speculation. And so a lot of that seems like it's on speculation, especially because the administration doesn't even start till January, but the speculation is based on campaign promises.
Wait, politicians and campaign promises don't always pan out.
I know. So it's like, how does that does not seem like good data to go off of to make financial decisions. I mean, you see the short term, but that's also the market is speculation too.
I think this is a little different though. And here's why I say it's a little different.
I'm sure you do. That's why you voted that way.
All right, we're going to go down that path. But all right, hear me out here. All right, there's precedent set. So people can relate to that. They know what has been and they know what was. So they're building that optimism around that precedent. And you're seeing that excitement. Now, whether it's misled or not, only time will tell. Obviously, hey, at the end of the day, it's politics. And one thing we can all agree on is it's like walking into a used car sales lot, come election time. So that part has passed. We know what we're getting, at least as of 2025. What's going to come from that is going to change and evolve. But people are optimistic, which in the market that we've been in, where people were scared, they weren't very optimistic about what's around the bend. People were being very conservative with their spend. People were being very conservative with their growth. That's what was. And so it's kind of nice, whether it's misled or not. It's a nice change in tone to see that optimism hit the market, especially at a time where peak season was looking a little grim.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong, dude. I got 3 kids. I've got rent to pay. Especially being a single dad now. It's rough out there for sure.
In Kansas City, Missouri, absolutely.
Yeah, the worst place for dating in the world. You can Google it.
How is that dating life now after the election?
It is a time. There's a reason why a lot of them chose the bear. So the other thing too, though, is like if you look at the cabinet,
Pete Hegseth.
Right. So my point is a lot of things are looking, with in 2016, a lot of the stuff that he did, like him or not, he broke a lot of norms. And it looks like he is very much on his way to do that again. So all I'm saying is it's based off campaign promises. Norms are clearly going out the window. Whether that ends up being good or bad is yet to see. But that seems like to me, that seems like a weird thing to speculate on. I love optimism.
I think there's a better path forward here today.
Yeah.
I think we have a lot of smart people waiting to share their opinions. And I think we tap onto their shoulder and let them share them. Because you and I are just a recruiter and a video guy. I mean, these guys got way more to share than we do.
That is true. That is very true. So it's probably a good time to stop hearing us in our hot takes and my dating life.
We talk a lot about the drivers and solutions on cents per mile. And the reason we can talk solutions is we provide them in our day job. At Hot Seat Services, we're all about providing solutions. Instead of throwing at the wall like everyone else and just trying to cram the top of the funnel to see what falls out, we're providing today's top drivers for your top lanes using our professional recruiters, our marketing to give you a guaranteed cost per hire model. So if you want to hear more about it, check out Hot Seat Services. Let us hire you some drivers today.
Paul, our guests have a lot of takes and we're going to bring them on so they can share them. We got Freightwaves, Thomas Wasson and Grace Sharkey joining us. And then we got Nick from Alvys. Welcome to the Cents Per Mile, guys.
Thank you.
Happy to be here.
Pleasure to be on.
You say that now, but there's still time. No, we're talking about a lot of different moving parts here, and I couldn't think of better people than yourselves to come in there and share your different perspectives, because from a recruiting and marketing standpoint is where a lot of my information comes. Same with Paul. We hear it from the drivers, we hear it from the executives, but you guys come from different sides of this. So, let's go around the room a little bit, introduce yourselves. I'll start with you, Nick, and, kind of your outlook on what we can expect closing out the year.
Yeah, Nick Darman here with Alvys. And by the way, we pronounce our company Alvys, like Elvis. And we like to say what Elvis did to rock and roll is what Alvys is doing to trucking space.
That's awesome. Please tell me that's a t-shirt somewhere.
That's a good idea. I'm going to talk to my marketing people, right?
I got you. See, on Cents Per Mile.
Yeah. So, these are very interesting topics. As I always say, one of the things I learned as I was graduating as a student of economics at Georgia State, by the way, I used to live in Atlanta, is any economist that's trying to predict the timing will be wrong. And you should run away from those that are trying to predict the timing. We could predict the cycles, but the cycles have their own timing. So that's just one thing to keep in mind.
There's a lot of moving parts that decide those cycles. You hear people often refer to trucking as a roller coaster, and it seems to fall in line with that at a lot of points.
Yeah, in hindsight, we're all smart and we'll all figure out exactly why things happened the way they did. But to actually predict the timing in the future, I don't think anyone was able to predict it accurately. Maybe once in a while, but if you predict accurately today, chances are high you're not going to predict it tomorrow. That's the statistical analysis and what I've seen.
Well, blind squirrel will find a nut eventually.
Yeah.
It's like how I always look back and I'm like, man, I wish I would have bought Bitcoin like 10 years ago.
You've been a happy person right now. You might not be here today. I'm not sure how I feel about that.
I love this podcast.
Just to actually turn the page over to what I think in terms of this election and what's actually happening. My understanding is any president or any party that takes over, we will only see consequences 10 to 20 years from now. It's never right on. And for some reason, people actually make this mistake that, now we have this party that won the elections. Things are going to be great. I actually believe regardless of who wins, the economy has its own way. There is some speculations, people feel optimistic, but the other side of the country don't feel optimistic. So they're actually going to figure out how not to invest as much as those of us who actually feel optimistic. So on that note, I believe no matter what happens, when we live in a world of free market and rule of law, whoever is the president doesn't make a big difference today or in the next 4 years, but we will see the consequences 20 years from now. So, for example, what Bush did in 2000s, we're only facing the consequences today. Or what the Clintons did in the 90s, we're feeling, the way the culture has shaped. Everything has actually begun in the 90s, and today we're seeing exactly what's happening, right? Whatever happened in the 80s when we abolished mental institutions, we're only now seeing some of the effects that's happening in the homeless situation. So people forget.
And that checks out, though. But you live in a day where a lot of people are looking for that instant gratification, and they think, the current president and the president-elect has been decided going into 2025. Their fates have been decided in the election. This is what we got. I don't agree with that, much to your point. I think it's more of right now people, to your point as well, half of America, or a little more than half of America, is feeling very optimistic. And then there's that other side. And there is no instant gratification. Things take time, like Biden's infrastructure bill. We haven't even seen that manifest in any result yet. It hasn't even paid out. I don't even think the check has been cut. There's a lot of time. You're going to be looking at that stuff years down the line.
Yeah. And then you add the entire debt situation and how much money this country owes. We should definitely hope for a divided government where House should go to the Democrats and Senate to the Republicans. That way, they're not going to agree on a budget. Otherwise, they're just going to start spending. I mean, that's my opinion. I could be wrong.
No, I mean, historically speaking, we've seen when one side had everything, not much got accomplished except debt.
Yeah, it's always funny, like when there is a president who does have some sort of legacy thing, like Obama had a supermajority, but waited till he didn't to pass Obamacare. You know, Trump waited till he didn't have a supermajority to pass his tax plan. You know, that's how that works.
It's very interesting.
So, Grace, you know, Nick has shared some of his perspectives on this. You know, you deal a lot with a different side of things as well on the freight tech, the brokerage side. What are you seeing as far as from the election forward into the new year? What's your outlook?
Yeah, so one thing I do want to touch on just in regards to Paul and Nick just preached to us, honestly. Like, can't wait to meet you in person and shake your hand on that one.
He's going to be at F3, I hear.
Yeah, well, I love what you're doing over there as well, Nick. Big fan of Jordan Kidd as well. So, yeah, love what you're doing at the company. But actually, my roots, like if you go back into like what I did in high school and college, like I was actually looking to go into politics, like out of college and stumbled my way into this industry. So I just want to say, Paul, to your optimism, you know, at the end of the day, I'm happy to be American, happy to be able to think differently than other people, and happy to be able to vote. So I'll throw that out there mixed with what Nick said and keep it positive, because that positive energy will manifest the future that we need. And now to maybe take a little bit of not an opposite stance, but like a in the now stance. I mean, transportation. I mean, Charles, you and I run in the same circles. Investors, particularly leadership in this industry, is all gas, no brakes right now.
Yeah, it's crazy. It started Wednesday.
Yeah, and it's, you know, it's a funny, I love this industry because, especially when I was building a brokerage, right? Like when I went to go fill up my car and gas was expensive, I personally hated it. But I personally loved it because I knew revenue would grow. You know, it's like this industry is an interesting one because sometimes what we love to see might not be best for our personal consumption. So set that aside. I love the fact that we're all gas, no brakes right now. I think that optimism is something I'm happy to see in the industry. I think from an much needed investing standpoint, I mean, I can't tell you how much my phone has blown up just in the last week alone of people looking to move forward with certain funds and looking to grow certain things. That makes me happy. You know, in regards to clearly tariff discussions, we're already starting to see movement on that. And in regards to, I mean, people are going to be bringing volume in to avoid whatever repercussion that might be. And I think Charles touched on this like we're almost, and Paul as well, this unknown period, right, until January. That has supply chains kind of shaking and getting stuff in sooner. And that is going to be great for trucking here in over the next like probably 6 months or so, right? Being able to move all that and respond to that.
Say it with me, Grace. Make Paul get a nervous twitch.
Yeah, make trucking great again, Paul. I'm just, you know, I have to.
Yeah.
Because, you know, like I said, it's an interesting industry because at the same time, right, let's be honest, as we do see rates go up, that will trickle somewhere. So, you know, again, I'm speaking on more of a transportation lens than maybe what I would prefer to see as a consumer, but it gets me excited. And I hope that with this too, and what I think the smart companies did when we saw a huge uptick in rates and clear capacity issues in the past, is I hope that we see trucking companies generate better revenue, pay off debts, and start investing in their companies as well. I'm really excited to see where clearly tech within the trucking industry goes, where we see optimization and dispatching and load assignments and how we get drivers home more and how we just make their overall days better. And I mean, honestly, drivers, some of it could be your investment, but I think a big part of it too, I get excited for warehouse investment. How are we getting drivers in and out faster? How are we making appointments more efficiently? How are we, working our doors and staffing appropriately?
And that's often a side people don't discuss as much, but it does impact the overall experience of the driver, which is always at the forefront of carrier side. They're always trying to figure out, how do I retain drivers? Well, it comes down to pay, experience, and benefits.
So that's kind of where I sit right now in general. I love the excitement. I think it's going to do really great for the industry right now, and making sure that hopefully with that debts are being paid down, and I hope people are being responsible with that in their businesses, and that we see investment inside those businesses too.
Wait, you're supposed to pay down those bills?
yeah, unfortunately.
That's not necessarily how we do it as America. Our debt is pretty high.
Again, not talking from a consumer experience, but yeah.
Right. So real quick, I would like to say on the left side of things, one thing that people do honestly make a lot of the argument is, at what point was America great, blah, blah, blah. I'm not going to get into that. But as far as making trucking great, I would like to go back probably to
I know where he's going.
1973, when River Rat turned his or back when like River Rat turned his reefer sideways on the highway. Everybody shut the country down for 7 days. They got some stuff figured out, and at that point too, when if you crossed a picket line, bad things happened. But we do have collective bargaining is a thing. We do have one more guest to see what they think. Charles, who we got?
Absolutely. My guy, Thomas. It's always fun to get you on the show. We have lots of conversations outside of the show. What is your perspective of things to come for the remainder of this year?
So I'm going to add a little bit of both. I see three big things. I'm looking at the tariff situation, structural changes. Will the tariff situation cause these accelerants in this already decades-long structural transition? And then we're looking at rates. Not only Fed rates, but the rates paid on freight. So those are the three big things on top of mind. I like what Nick said earlier when he talked about, regardless of administrations and stuff, there's a lot of bigger changes that have been going on. The tariff one is fascinating, and I know I'm your trucking expert, but maritime stuff does drive trucking. It comes to kind of downstream. Trucking is the catfish, and I'm just waiting for somebody to drop some crumbs from the proverbial water, basically. And when we're talking about tariffs, there's two sides of the coin. One side says this will make your products get more expensive, because to most people, they think, well, if my toilet paper is $10 and it goes, add some tariff, I pay an extra $1, it goes up to $11. Other people are saying, well, it's actually more complicated because you can game the system. So when we talk about how you tariff something, it's called ad valorem, which is Latin for a tariff on the value of the declared good. And so the question we're watching, and that we do not know the answer yet, is that will the estimated value of the item be the thing that is tariffed? Will it possibly actually cause higher prices, or did we have funny business? So let's say that toilet paper was made in Shenzhen by Wasson Thomas, because when we're in China, my surname goes first. I'm Wasson Thomas if I was in China. Wasson Thomas makes the toilet paper for $1, and then when we're shipping it over, I declare it for $2, when in fact it could theoretically be declared for $5. There is tariff arbitrage, my friend. Where's the $3? So like a poor man's Bill Nye the Science Guy, some experts are saying, well, we may absorb the cost, or we may ship our toilet paper from Mexico, accelerating a structural trend that we've noticed in nearshoring. Something we need to watch. Mexico, by the way, is going to be the thing to watch, because China already, since 2016, has decided, let's go backwards. The other thing to think about, now we're on the zone 2, structural reform. Either way, we're going to continue to see the impacts of not only the changing of this China-based trade, which, if we look at it from China's standpoint, we're actually a smaller percentage than we used to be. They love to go to Vietnam, Southeast Asia. China ships everywhere, because Wasson Thomas, if I own Shenzhen and I'm responsible for factories, I have to keep pumping stuff out. So that's one of the other structural things that we're seeing. We're seeing us move to Mexico, and we're going to see this increase. So The third thing is, what does this mean for rates? Because that's the most important question we're seeing right now.
That's the thing that everyone's looking at.
It is, and we are in a peak season at the very early signs that I believe, is the beginning of the uptick in the freight cycle. And people will tell me on X, they say, well, Thomas, life sucks right now. And I say, yes, it does, but it will be less suckier the next day. We're not telling you, this isn't like mission accomplished. I'm not on the aircraft carrier. There's not a banner. We got a lot of work to do, and we've got a lot of places to go. But this is one of the first times we have observed in our data set that things have progressively somewhat gotten better, and it hasn't crapped the bed.
So optimism playing a role in that? Is the optimism playing a role in that?
The optimism is, but we're also kind of in this amazing thing that I'm calling the double whammy.
You have a thing that you call everything, Thomas. It's amazing. You are the man of random things and facts.
Well, this is how we make America freight again. I know we always say to love trucking, but making America freight again is what we want. We want more freight because that's how you make trucking great again. So in order to make America freight, people are forwarding more stuff because they're worried about the potential impacts of these tariffs. Now, whether it is ad valorem, whether it's a percentage, whether Thomas lied on his customs paper because his Wasson Thomas hooked him up in Shenzhen, that doesn't matter right now because psychologically, we're seeing a bull run. That's kind of what we're looking at. And economies are so infinitesimally complex that you just have to believe like a Jedi. And so the first thing we saw in July with maritime data was people scared of port closures in the East Coast. Makes sense. The second one we're seeing right now is people are concerned with tariffs. They don't have to be right or wrong on tariffs, but this translates very good into trucking volumes, especially when January and February are typically your crappiest season. Now, we're also seeing reefer demand go off the rails right now because reefer is in this perfect storm of where you need things to stay a certain temperature, and I can't put a blanket on everything like it's a dry van. And so I'm looking at those big three things. I think Nick had a great point. I think Grace had a point in terms of summarizing everything. We're seeing an acceleration of structural trends that may be attributed or not to a certain administration, but at the same time, like Grace is saying, it is giving a bump in terms of, time to come out, green shoots, let's invest.
All right. So with that, so we are out of time. But real quick, we'll go through everybody and give you a shot to plug yourselves. So Thomas, we'll start with you first. We'll move backwards. Where can everybody find you?
Check it out, freightwaves.com/loaded and rolling. We have the podcast on Apple, YouTube, and Spotify. And you can look me up as well. We'll be at F3. If you see any of our stuff, I'm with Grace. Amazing stuff as always.
All right. And Grace, people obviously can find you with Thomas. We just found out, but where else can people find you?
I'll probably be hanging out with Thomas for sure, but yeah, go check out articles on freightwaves.com. I'm also on the Stockout, so that's one of our podcasts at Freightwaves. You can check that out anywhere, but I would suggest you go to our YouTube page. We use a lot of graphs. And then, of course, you can check me out along with Charles as well on the Road Dog Trucking channel, right? I am on Tuesdays and Thursdays from 5 to 6, and Thomas has been helping me out with the show as well, so it's usually him or I on those episodes too.
I do love graphs. I'm all about picture books. And Nick, where can everybody find you and find out more about what you're doing?
Yeah, alvys.com, very simple. It's alvys.com. The only social media I have is LinkedIn, so you could find me on LinkedIn, Nick Darman.
Awesome. Well, thanks for coming on the show. So Charles, that was a lot to take in. What's your take? Actually, I don't want to hear this, but what's your take?
This was an awesome show. Getting Thomas with his facts is always fun. Always a pleasure to have my good friend Thomas and Grace on the show. But most of all, Nick, you are awesome, my guy. You are going to be at F3, right?
I will.
All right. We need to link up and have more conversations with Nick.
You know what's really interesting, though? Before we sign off, Nick did say that it's about 20 years till you start seeing other people's economies. Technically, this is Obama's economy. Anyway, all right.
We cannot end on that. We cannot end on that.
All good things come to an end. That's what you say. Now say the thing. Say that you got to stay.
Thank you for tuning in to Cents Per Mile, where we're making trucking great again. I'm your host, Charles Gracie.
And I'm your co-host, Paul Gibson. See you next time.